everybody. Welcome to the Hallmark podcast. And we're really excited to be back doing one of our Christmas classic Hallmark episodes that we've been doing. This is our sixth one, I think. And we look back at movies older than 2013 or older. And so this has been a lot of fun. And today we are doing kind of historical period pieces
Yes. Yeah.
from Hallmark. I am film critic Rachel and Thaddeaus is here.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, how you doing?
I am doing very well. It was nice to get to revisit, to do some like period type
Yeah.
pieces for Hallmark, which they have not done many. So,
No, I miss when they would. I mean, aside from One Calls the Heart, that was really the only thing that they have done for a long
mhm,
time.
yeah.
And I miss a little bit. I miss the movies with like just a little bit of ambition. I mean, I guess they did do this year the 50s, the Holiday Spectacular
Oh,
instead of the
yes, yes.
50s. But
Mm,
I'd love for them to do a like pioneer story or a
mhm,
Victorian story or something like
yeah.
that again.
Yeah, me too. I
Yeah.
agree.
Well, let's dive in. This is going to be fun. The
Mhm,
first one that we're going to talk about is an old-fashioned Christmas, and we had previously talked about an old-fashioned Thanksgiving,
mhm,
which was, I guess, a really big hit
mhm,
for Hallmark. They had over 5 million views.
mm,
Yeah, and I think this old-fashioned Christmas must have not been a hit. I couldn't find the
mhm,
numbers or anything, but the fact that it was very difficult to locate.
mhm.
We had to watch it on like an embedded screen on a
Yes.
YouTube video. It was pretty bad. So
Mm,
sorry, an old fashioned Christmas. But even I looked into the DVDs and they weren't available for US
mm,
players. So it was the only way that we got to see
mhm.
it.
Yes.
Yeah, and this does is almost completely recast except
Mm,
for Jacqueline Bisset. And the summary is the story of an old fashioned Thanksgiving continues. Isabella and Tilly pay a visit to Ireland, hoping
mhm,
Isabella's long ago suitor, the Earl of Shannon, can assist Tilly in getting her writing published.
mhm.
And this is director Don McBurdy and writer Donald Martin. Overall, what do you think about this?
Okay, so I liked it much better than the first movie.
Yeah.
If those of y'all that heard the previous podcast, I wasn't a big fan of that one.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember when I this was my first time actually watching this one because I remember the first time when the first one originally came out, I remember watching it and not liking it. So I was like, I'm not watching the sequel if I didn't like the first one. But maybe I should have because this was better. I thought that they had I think they had a better handle on the characters of Tilly and her grandmother. I think like they addressed their flaws a little bit better than they did in the first movie. It wasn't just constant fighting. And
Yeah.
which was kind of annoying in the first movie. I actually bought the co- the conflict that Tilly was having in this particular movie. So I ended up, enjoying it more than the first one. I'll just say that.
I agree. I also enjoyed it more than the first one. And I think one thing that helped it is that because it was in Ireland and because it was like a
Hmm.
love triangle story, it didn't feel sort of lightweight Little Women like the first
Hmm.
one did,
Hmm.
where I would have just rather watched a version of
Little
Little
Women.
Women than this
Hmm.
like random Lucy May Alcott story that wasn't
Hmm.
as good. And so I think that helped it as well. And it was just more fun. It was
Hmm.
more soapy, a little
Yes.
fluffy,
Yeah.
and that's more my jam than like poverty
Hmm.
and debt, grief, and everything. I don't know. I
Hmm.
just like the story better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Hmm.
It's basically a love triangle
Yes. Yep.
and everybody falls for each other extremely quickly
Hmm.
in this movie. And but Tilly is still engaged. She ended the last movie engaged, but
Right.
they've been separated for 2 years, which
Hmm.
would be brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I actually liked that in that, he had because Gad, the fiance, had gotten to kind of travel and do things, and she was kind of stuck in that town in her house, and she hadn't had any other experiences. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually thought that that was fine, and I was glad that he was willing to like wait for her and everything. I thought that the whole let's go to my, the grandmother's former lover or whatever he was, and for the help with the poetry, he's married to someone else, and like
Like his father is Byron, is that right? Or something
well,
like that?
or not Byron, but I guess a contemporary of Byron, and he
Oh,
was
okay.
another like poet or a writer or something, and she was trying, and so the grandmother was trying to get him to help her with the poetry, while the guy's wife is trying to set Tilly up with her son, because apparently there's, the family is kind of like, trying to uh to hold on to their estate, because they're because she's mismanaged their money, I guess, since the father has been ill, and
Mm.
and so that was
Which is
interesting.
surprising because they were acting like they were super poor in the last movie.
Yeah, so I think what they're thinking is, so the because remember, the grandmother was rich,
Mm,
and the mother, and Tilly's mother, like refused to accept the money from the grandmother because of
mm.
what happened with the parents getting together. So I think so I guess she knew that Tilly's grandmother was rich, and
Hmm.
so they were trying to get access to that money.
Yeah, they're trying to get Cameron, I think his name was, to
Yeah.
fall
Mhm.
for Tilly and vice versa. And they
Well,
do
she didn't
have
care if she didn't care if Cameron fell for Tilly. He just wanted Tilly to fall for Cameron so they could get married and he could get the
right,
money.
yeah. Yeah. So it starts out, there's not like a ton of Christmas in this movie, but
No.
they start out, they decorate the tree, and there's this
Mhm,
thing called the witch bowl,
mhm.
which is this candle for it's this ornament that wards off evil spirits. Then they
Yes.
also leave a candle in the window for Mary and Joseph.
Mhm. Yes.
So that was
Yeah.
nice.
And then
And go ahead.
and then it's just like the Christmas dinner at the end. But
Yeah.
yeah, other than that, it's not very Christmassy. It's kind of more of a kind of melodrama
Yeah.
for most of it, because um, you know it does seem like, so of course Tilly and the grandmother both figure out um, that Cam's mother is trying to set them up, and but they kind of do seem to like be drawn to each other
Yeah.
somewhat, and when the grandmother notices this, she sends a letter to Gad, Tilly's fiance, and asks him the to
Because
come to
he's
the
in the UK.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and so to come to Ireland to see them. And also we get to meet Tilly's paternal grandfather, so her deceased father's father and brother, who are also in Ireland, which I
Hmm.
don't remember him being from Ireland, but anyway, so they get to meet them, and there's like this kind of love-hate thing going on
Yeah.
between her grandmother and her grandfather, which was interesting. I think.
Yeah. She apologizes to him, to
Hmm.
Sean, for the
Hmm.
way she treated his son,
Hmm.
Tilly's father, and he says that she's a witch.
Yes, multiple times.
Yeah.
She's a witch, and he won't accept her apology at
Yeah.
first. But it does seem like there's a little charge in their
Hmm.
interactions, and then all of a sudden, you know, that kind of was over. Which, I mean, I saw it coming, but I also like didn't see it coming. At the same time, it was a little. It was
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have Cameron and Tilly have a near kiss.
Yes.
They do seem to be attracted to each other,
Hmm.
which I'm just sure that's why the grandma was like, "Get out here now, before
Yes,
it's too late."
exactly. Because she can see Tilly, starting to kind of feel drawn to him, and obvious and surprisingly to Cameron, who seems to be running around with barmaids and other women of ill repute.
Mhm.
He develops, I guess, real feelings for for
Fertility.
Tilly, and then you have them like so you have Gad and Cameron like doing their little subtle fighting,
Well,
and
it's subtle, and then they actually fence.
yeah, and the fence does get almost lead to a fist fight, but Tilly throws herself in between them, um, and then I think that night. So after that night, they go to the bar, and of course, Gad, who doesn't really drink much, comes back drunk, and she and Cameron like go walking together, and he's like trying to seduce her, and Gad finds out, and he's like, "Oh, you need to choose. I'm gonna go away and whatever." And she said, and then I think he proposes to, and then I think Cam proposes to her.
Well,
And
he says, you want me, don't you? I want to
yeah,
kiss you. You want to kiss me.
mm,
And then Gad sees
yes, and she
and
does
it's like a
kiss him,
very
but
small kiss. It's like
it was,
a
and it wasn't even like on the. It was like kind of like
yeah, it was
in
like
the
on the
cheek,
yeah,
lip,
yeah.
like thing. It was like the thing that Andrew Walker does, where he like looks like he's gonna kiss him in the lips and then kisses on the cheek in some of his movies. That's what it was. Uh,
Ho, ho, ho! We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
to Gad, who had been drinking, I guess it would look like an actual kiss. So I can understand him being upset about
Mhm.
that. Um, so, and of course, then when he proposes, he just talks, when Cameron proposes, he talks about how she makes him feel like he wants to be responsible, and he wants her to be like his cheerleader person, or his muse
Hmm.
for his own writing. And she's like, okay, all you're doing is talking about like how I make you feel, and not, and it's all about you. So no, I can't marry
Yeah.
you.
She's like, I don't want to be your muse.
Yes, she wants to be a
But Gad
writer in her own
leaves.
right.
He
Hmm.
storms off.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, which if I saw my fiance kissing another guy, I would leave too.
Yeah, I would be pretty upset.
So, so that actually made sense. Now
Well,
of course,
especially because he thinks that she might really be interested. I mean, he probably could have a better conversation with her about it,
I
but
he,
still, it's
maybe he could have waited.
understandable.
Yeah, I definitely think it was understandable. Maybe he could have waited until he sobered up because he was still kind of affected by the alcohol that at that point. But other than that, like, I mean, that's one of the most reasonable reasons for someone to storm off. Like,
Hmm.
in so many movies, it's just a hug, and they're like, oh no,
Right. Or you just like see them talking or something.
yeah,
But then Cameron says he loves her and proposes. It's a
hmm
lot in a very short period of time, but
yeah. There was
uh,
just a few days, it seems like.
yeah. And she says no. And then there's this whole, she slaps him.
Yes.
She says no. And they accuse them of basically being gold diggers.
Which
And
they were.
yeah. And so then they're kicked out. So not a
Yes.
good Christmas so far
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah, but then they end up at her grandfather's house.
Yeah.
Um, and and the grandfather convinces her to go talk to Gad and ask for forgiveness. And so she ends up doing just that. And while she's gone, that's when her grandmother and grandfather end up talking. And
Yeah. And then they
you know,
kiss. I was like,
yes, they
whoa.
kiss. They're like, I'm just going back to the United States, and he's, going to be in Ireland, but she might come back or something. So
Mhm.
they haven't figured out what they're going to do. But
Well, and I like that scene too where Sean tells her to stop this nonsense and go and get go and
yeah,
get Gad back.
yes, exactly. That
Yeah.
was a good scene.
That was a fun
So
scene.
she does. She goes back and tells him how much she loves him, and apologizes. And I think that they did a decent job with like the Tilly character. I think, she's young, she's kind of fanciful, she's all into like the art and literature and the romance stuff. So I could see her kind of be she seemed like the type of character that could be kind of swept up in that whole situation with Cameron. So
Yeah, I can see
I
that being a poet and everything.
mhm. Yeah, so I understood that, and then she kind of comes back to reality, and then you see her kind of engaging in a little like manipulative tactics, kind of like her grandmother, who was uber manipulative.
Hmm.
And and then she kind of recognizes that in herself and kind of comes out of it. And then the grandmother, we see her become, having showing actual remorse. And then she kind of says that part of the reason that she was so hard on Tilly's father was that she felt like he was stealing her daughter away, and kind of in the process of, kind of fighting against their relationship, she ended up pushing her away even farther. Um, so I think that they did a better job of exploring the characters, and having them actually grow. Those two characters in particular.
Yeah, it was just more fun than the first
Mhm.
one. And
Yeah,
like I said, you didn't have Little Women to directly compare to it with
yeah,
this.
hmm
And Little Women is one of my favorite books and favorite stories. So that's a tall order.
yeah.
But what did you think of like the new cast? Did you
Um.
think
So
they
okay.
did a good
So I
job?
think that there's mostly all new characters except for the grandmother Tilly and Gad.
Tilly,
And
yeah, and Gad.
Gad was played by the same actor. I think Tilly was different, and the
Yeah.
grandmother was the same. So I think so. Um, I liked them all. I
Hmm.
thought that they all gave pretty good performances. I thought the cast overall was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd
So
agree. And I thought there was enough kind of difference between the two guys, and they were both very handsome. So
mhm,
it made for like, which one is she gonna pick? Pretty
mhm.
fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean the production was all top notch for this, as was the last one. And it would be nice to see Hallmark making movies like
Mhm.
this again, which are
Yeah.
just a little bit more ambitious, I
Yeah.
think. And so yeah, I enjoyed. It felt like reading a romance novel,
Mm. Yeah, I could
period romance novel.
yes, very much so. And even I have to say, even with Cameron, I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want them together, but I was like, he's ready.
Mm-hmm.
He can meet someone else and he'd be okay. He might do okay now.
Yeah. Yeah,
His
it would
heart's
have been
been
fun if there'd been kind of a place for him to land as far as
yeah,
another love interest or something like that. It would have been
yeah,
fun.
yeah. I agree. So that
Mm-hmm.
so that was the one thing. But I think that the actor did a good enough, decent job of making him like not. I mean, because he was doing a lot of kind of suspect things and not great, but he was played him with some charm and a bit of self awareness, and
Mm-hmm.
actually showed that he actually did have some heart in there somewhere. So I did and I could buy why she would that she could see that too, especially as like a writer and a romantic type.
Yeah.
So I get that. So I did actually enjoy that aspect of
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame it's not more available.
Mhm.
I think it was a pretty cute movie. What would you give it 1 to 5?
I would give it 3. It was fine. I'd watch it again. It's not like, up there anywhere near my favorites, but
Mhm.
it was pleasant. Like I said, I definitely enjoyed it more than the first one. So yeah, I'd
Mhm.
give it 3.
I can't remember what I gave the first one, but I think I'd give it like a 3.5 actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm down in the 2s or something for the for the
Okay.
outside of 3.
Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by W Rated, the podcast where we willingly watch the world's worst rated movies. Join me, Daisy,
and me, Claire, as we break down the IMDb Bottom 100, choosing a different film from the list every episode.
We take a deep dive into the plot, production, release, and reviews, usually with a special guest, to uncover if these films are truly as bad as everyone says they are.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, and anywhere else you find your podcasts.
Well, let's talk about Silent Night.
Mhm.
And this is from 2002.
Mhm.
And it's in a cabin in a World War II front. A German mom with a son mediates a truce between 3 German and 3 American soldiers so they can all celebrate Christmas Eve 1944 together. This is directed by Rodney Gibbons and written Roger Aylward and stars Linda Hamilton,
Mhm.
Matthew Harbour, Romaine Osario. So
Mhm.
overall, what do you think about this one?
I enjoyed this one. I was pleasantly surprised. I don't think I even saw this when it first came, back when it first came out. And so, I wasn't sure, what I was going to think. I'm usually this isn't particularly my taste in movies, but I thought that they did a good job. And I also think they did a really good job with the snow. It was, and it definitely looks like Germany and or what I'd imagine like out in the woods in Germany somewhere would look.
Mhm.
And I liked that they had the subtitles at first, and then they actually explained why they were speaking in English
Yes, I did too. That was really good.
because usually they so many of these movies they're in another country, and then you'll have people that there have the people that are from like whatever country it is by themselves speaking in English for no reason. So I thought that this was good, like, oh, we're practicing our English lessons. Oh, we don't want and then when they were all together and you'd have the German people like off in a scene by themselves, we don't want them to think that we're plotting against them, so we'll just continue to speak in English. Like they actually took that time to do that, and then other times they would actually have the subtitles, which I like that. So it's like it was loosely based on a true story. I wonder like how much of this is what actually happened, but
Yeah, it says on IMDb, it says the film is loosely based on true story. Events are changed for dramatic purposes, almost to the point of propaganda of trying to make the Germans look evil. The
mhm,
film is narrated by one of the participants, Fritz Winken, a 12-year-old German child who later in life lived in Honolulu and met with another of the protagonists, Sergeant Ralph Blank, who also
mhm,
survived the war, as did Private James Rassi.
mhm,
Unfortunately, the fate of the rest of the people who are portrayed in the film is left unexplained by the narrative.
mhm,
However, However, a far more accurate version of the story is told by the real Fritz on an episode of the TV series Unsolved Mysteries, where he was able
mhm.
to reunite with all the soldiers. So that's
Oh,
interesting.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that all of them probably did survive because the armistice was the next day,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So yeah, I do think that. Yeah, I think we're supposed to assume, and they just lost touch.
Hmm.
Uh, Also, cool to see a very young Gianpaolo Venuta
Yeah,
as
yeah.
as his grandson. I was, he looks the
I wrote
same.
that down. I was like, it's our friend from Good Wish.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he plays the grandson, and who the Fritz character is telling the story to.
right.
And
Yes,
they don't use it that much. There's only a little bit of narration. So,
right. Yes, very, very
mhm.
minimal. It's like at the beginning, kind of like a little pieces here and there, and then at the end, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought Linda Hamilton was really good in this.
Yes, I agree. I thought that the overall the cast was very good. I I think I kind of bought that something like this could happen, like you're in a neutral territory, everybody put away your weapons, and
I
like
mean,
and it's Christmas, they all celebrate Christmas, you
and
know.
I wouldn't say that they are propaganda like this
Mhm.
person on IMDb says about the Germans, but because they're in Germany,
Right.
so they're going to be more aggressive as
Hmm.
far as enemy combatants in their own land, and
Hmm.
what's going on with her and what she's doing and hiding these
Hmm.
people, and they're going to be untrusting. But I don't know, I felt like they give up their food to them all in the end. There's somewhat of an understanding by the end between
Hmm.
Rassi and Lieutenant.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't say that it's propaganda like this guy, whoever wrote this on IMDb, is saying.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that either. I liked how they gave reasons for why Linda Hamilton's character was like so against the war, that her
Hmm.
father had been, seriously injured. I think like half of his face blown off in World War I. And
Hmm.
then he ended up and he, got rid of all the mirrors and was, obviously had some PTSD symptoms, and then ended up committing suicide later. And so she just saw the effect. And so she just really didn't want that. So, and then
Yeah,
the,
that was good.
mhm,
And yeah, at the beginning, Fritz wants to join the
mhm,
Hitler Youth, join the war, and she
mhm,
refuses.
right.
And she says that speaking English is an act of rebellion
Mhm,
against the Third Reich and the
mhm,
Führer. And that's when these soldiers, there's three soldiers, American soldiers,
mhm,
who come in. One
mhm.
of them is badly injured on
Yes.
his leg. And that was probably the most intense parts, is when they were like
Mhm.
operating. They had to
Yes.
cauterize the wound, and so
Yeah.
they heat up the bar, the
Yeah.
iron bar, and get it like red hot, and then they
Mhm,
put it on his knee or his leg, and it's just like screaming.
mhm.
Like, oh my gosh, we had two cauterizing of wounds
Yeah.
in the other movie too. Come on.
Yeah. And
Like,
then,
woo.
yeah. And then they had, the bite down on the bar and all that stuff, like
Oh
the
my
like the
gosh.
old fashioned, like, oh, I feel
Did they
so
do the
bad.
bite down, or was that in the other one?
It was this one. It was this
Oh,
one.
was it?
Yeah.
Because the other one, he has them bite on the bar.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
when
you're talking
he's
about two. Oh no, yeah, it was before that. It was before the cauterizing of wood. It was
oh,
like earlier on. I was like,
yeah,
oh,
that
no, and
was. I mean,
like,
as a medical professional,
yeah. So I was like, oh, I'm so glad we have anesthesia now. Yeah.
she does give them disinfectant. They're
Mhm.
skeptical. Is she trying to poison them?
Yes.
And they that first doesn't trust her hot water.
Mhm.
She brings them. She takes the guns. I don't
Mhm.
tolerate guns at my house.
Yeah.
Puts them in the cellar.
Yeah.
And then one of them says, "We will never be friends. You're an American. You wish to destroy our country and the Fuhrer."
Mhm.
And he says, "I'm not your enemy. He is, and don't believe everything you hear on the radio."
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. So
And
I thought.
then,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, and then the German soldiers come. Things get
Yeah.
more complicated after that.
Yes. Um and so she lets them think that, but prior to them going into the house, she let them think that she let the German soldiers think that the American soldiers were armed, but she had already they had already taken and hidden their guns. And so
Hmm.
when they go in, they agree. And then she has her son go and dispose of their guns, and there's a lot of tension at first.
Hmm. Yeah, the German lieutenant accuses her of
Mhm.
treason,
Yes.
and she says that she talks about her oldest son
Hmm.
was shot and bled to death.
Right.
And so she says, "Kindly leave your war outside." It's a good
Yes.
line.
And he's like, it's an honor to die for, for our country, and he's very much a true believer at this time. But he's still he still kind of goes along with it, and then they have like a somewhat pleasant dinner. They all
Yeah.
empty out their rations of what they have to eat, and she prepares dinner for all of them. They sit down together, they kind of get to know each other and their background a little bit.
Pineapple pudding.
Yes.
I was like, that sounds interesting.
Yes, and that seems to be the way that to get the lieutenant or to kind of soften. He's like, oh, I like this pineapple pudding.
Yeah. And they all contributed something. They have like
Yeah.
wine and then like sausage and other things from meal kits.
Yes. And one of them has cookies that his wife made.
Yeah. And she hasn't heard from her husband, a baker, for 2 months.
Yes.
And then, as you said, her father was tortured and shooting himself. And so she has a lot of baggage going into this.
Her son, her father, her husband. I mean, yeah. So so it definitely made sense that she would kind of go away into the woods, their little cabin in the woods that they had, so that she wouldn't lose the other son to, I guess, the Gestapo. So it was interesting. And then you have this command, I guess, what was his rank? The guy that comes in at the end, some type of commander. He comes in.
Oh, I didn't write that down.
Yes, so he comes
Sarge.
in.
Was it Sarge?
Yes, and he comes in, and he's like at first and trying to figure out who's in charge, and where the weapons are. And as soon as he realizes that there are no weapons in the house, he starts speaking German, and we're like, oh no. He apparently had been educated in the Americas, and so that he could infiltrate the ranks of the Union, in particular the American soldiers, and so that's what he did. And he and of course definitely goes after Linda Hamilton's character for being treasonous, because the lieutenant admits that she misled him into thinking that the American soldiers were armed when they were not. And so and so of course, this whole thing, so she's exposed for what she ended up doing to this high ranking armed services member.
But then they eat together, they pray together, and then there's a really sweet scene where they all sing Silent Night.
Yes,
that was very, very moving. And then they exchange gifts. The one in the American gives her soap, and she's real excited about that. And then there becomes big tension because the German soldier sees that one of the Americans has a medal.
Oh yes,
German medal.
Yes, and he says that so he accuses him of taking it from someone that was killed, and the American soldier says no, he kind of got this in through bartering, basically. And
and the lieutenant says that his brother was completely stripped, beaten, and including taking his medals. So he's really bitter about that.
Yes. And then, but he's able to, and so the American soldier says, no, I did not. That's not how he did this. He actually did get this through barter.
And then there's a scene where Herbie, who's the soldier that was injured and operated on, he comes in, and when the German and the American are fighting, and he has gun. He pulls a gun out on them all.
Yes.
And so that's a tense moment.
Yes, and that's when the sergeant takes the gun, kind of gets Kirby to calm down because he's a little kind of disoriented from being out and and his injuries and the pain for so long. So and they're able to kind of calm him down and take the weapon outside and we go back to peace until our fake American soldier comes.
Yeah. So then Sarge gives the medal to the lieutenant, but that's when this new soldier comes in. He starts out with an American accent because he sees the soldiers, and then you find out that he's an undercover soldier, basically.
Yes.
And he's brutal.
Yeah.
He says to take the Americans out and shoot them.
Yep. And then Lieutenant refuses to comply with his orders.
Yeah, because he knocks her down, and then the lieutenant knocks him out, the soldier out, and helps her back up.
Yes.
And they leave Herbie there,
right,
to recover, and then there's this younger soldier who's like maybe 15, 16.
Yes.
And they say they tell him to take the kid.
Yes, and they
to
say
the Americans.
to take him as a prisoner of war so that he does not have to fight anymore, because he's young, and the interesting thing is he's the one of the Germans that does not speak any English, and so which is interesting. And
don't they say that later that day the war was over?
Either later that, yes, I think, or it might either later that day or the next day. I couldn't tell, but it was pretty much right after everybody left, they got word that the war was over.
Yeah. So this is a really moving story. I thought it was very well made, very well acted, well done, and it had enough Christmas to be really meaningful. This movie was actually about Christmas. It wasn't just a movie with Christmas colors. This is about forgiveness and atonement and what really Christmas is about, which is nice.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I would give it a pretty high score. I mean, it's not the kind of thing I'd want to rewatch all the time, but I would give it a 4.75. I think it's really solid.
Yeah, I think you're right. So because you're going off of for me, kind of going off of would I watch this again? Is this my usual taste versus actual quality as a movie? And so if I'm going more towards that, or kind of doing the balance between the two, then I think I would go. I go 4.25, because 4.75 for actual quality for this type of movie, and then 3.75 for how much I actually enjoyed it. So split the difference. 4.25.
Sounds good. That's good. And you can watch it on Tubi if people are looking for it. It's on there.
Yeah.
So
we actually were able to find this.
Yeah, you were able to find it.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
I'm going to talk about Love's Christmas Journey. And this is technically actually two movies. It's in two parts.
Yes.
Yeah, both 90 minutes, both of them. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
A lot to watch. Yeah. First, before we dive in, I should ask, how familiar are you with the Love Comes Softly series as a whole?
I've seen them all. more than once. And this is like almost like a spinoff, because it's not part of like the original series. It kind of offshoots based off of some characters that are related, but they don't go through like that whole saga that the actual like Love Comes Softly series.
Yeah. Yeah. They're supposedly the children of Marty and Clark, right? It's
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
From the original. And I
yes.
was thinking that they had twins, but I guess they didn't. I don't know. I was thinking that they had twin boys, but maybe I'm remembering wrong.
They had more. They had other kids too. They weren't, because I think they ended up. So in the first movie, right, Marty is pregnant,
Yes.
and Clark has the daughter Missy from his first marriage.
Yeah, and like half the movies are about Missy.
Yes, so Missy's the
more than half.
Continues to go down. Yes, and let's see. So I think that in the second movie of the series, I think they have like 3 or 4 kids at that point. So, and I do think there might be twin boys. I think you're right. So this is one of their sons and the other daughter. So, so.
Yeah. I mean, they just barely mention them, so it's hard to remember. But yeah, I love Love Comes Softly series. It was really the first thing of Hallmark that I like loved. It got really into. My mom got me for Christmas, got me them all on DVD.
Oh, okay.
And my mom got me the DVDs one year for the whole set for Christmas, and then I saw the other ones. There's another one with Wes Brown in it.
Oh, there too. So they're the prequels, and so they're about so Clark and his first wife.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in Love Begins, it's Clark meeting the first wife, and then Love's Everlasting Courage is the second one, and that's when the first wife dies. And so they're both occurring prior to Love Comes Softly.
Okay, yeah. And then this one's a spinoff. I'm sure I saw it, but I don't, they all blend in a little bit. I know a lot of people don't like the later ones in the Love Comes Softly series about what's her name? The adopted daughter. But I like them. I think they're good. I like that one where they have the cholera and they have epidemic and they have to figure out what's happening. To me, it felt believable. I don't know. Like nothing she did was too crazy. She makes an IV. She's a doctor. And yeah, I like this whole series. I enjoy it. I guess this is kind of I like When Calls the Heart fine, but this was kind of my When Calls the Heart, the sort of my introduction to Hallmark in that way.
Yeah. Personally, I think he's a little better than When Calls the Heart, but that's just me. So,
yeah, I agree. Partly because I do have nostalgia, but When Calls the Heart, the romance was so slow, and at least in these movies, you get a full romance in 1.5 hours.
Yeah, that's
that I like better.
It's easier to do these, in movies segments rather than as a TV show. So yeah.
Yeah, When Calls the Heart can make me crazy with its pacing. But yeah, so this is, as you said, about the two children of Clark and Marty, and the plot, there's 2 parts. The plot is when mourning the loss of her husband and daughter, recently widowed Ellie King visits her brother Aaron and his children for Christmas. Ellie does her best to enjoy the holidays, making new friends with Mrs. Thompson, a local shopkeeper, and handsome admirer, Deputy Strode. When Aaron travels out of town to purchase land, Ellie agrees to watch his children, but the season's festivities are threatened when Aaron goes missing. So that's the summary for both of parts. Overall, what do you think of this?
So I really like these movies. There's a lot going on, so I understand why they decided to divide it into 2. because there was a whole lot going on with like the town and then him leaving and getting, you know, stranded and robbed. And then you had the dastardly businessman who was
Yeah,
trying
Mr.
to like,
Sheffield, no
yeah,
good.
yes, with an American accent.
Yeah.
So and trying to find the railroad plan so he can take advantage and get rich by, you know, purchasing that land and everything. So yeah, and then there's the two romances going on with Ellie and the deputy, and then the Johnson boy and the mayor's daughter. Yeah, with,
Yeah.
you know, Bobby Campo as the Johnson boy, and of course we love Natalie Hall as Ellie. So it's just, and the funny thing is, someone that's, you know, for me, so I've, you know, kind of somewhat familiar with soaps, and there's a lot of actors that have, you know, done extensive soap
Yeah.
opera
Because Greg
work.
Vaughn is on Days of Our Lives, right?
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
then
And Natalie's done soaps, and
yeah,
Charles Shaughnessy's done soaps,
yes.
and Dylan, I don't know if Dylan has, but
Mhm.
but yeah, a
Yes,
lot of
yes,
soap.
yes, he
Yes,
has.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Dylan Bruce has
mhm,
is plays Michael.
yes.
And then of course you've got Samwise Gamgee. Sean Astin.
As the
Sean
mayor.
Astin playing the mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a great cast. Bobby Campo, he's super charming.
Mhm.
I kept thinking that the girl who the mayor's daughter was named Annabelle, but that's the little girl. Her name,
Yes.
I guess, is Suzanne, I think.
Is who?
I think the mayor's daughter
Oh yeah. Is
named
it Annie?
Suzanne.
Suzanne.
I don't
Okay.
know. She's just the mayor's daughter.
Yeah.
I think they said Suzanne. But yeah, so she's in love with Eric, who is played by Bobby Campo, and he's so charming in this.
Mhm. Or as everybody calls him, the Johnson boy, because apparently his father was just this no good criminal that just you know, I guess made off with he robbed the bank and made off with a bunch of people's money, and they just dropped him and left him in town while he ran off with people's money.
Yeah.
And then he ended up being taken in by Aaron. So everybody held his father's actions against him.
Mhm.
And even though the mayor tried to be kind of a little nicer about it, he just definitely was like not about his daughter getting with the Johnson boy.
No.
So
He does not want to allow it, and so then he sneaks away and tries to convince her to run away with him.
mhm, yes.
And then just a few minutes later, after she says no, a few minutes later, the barn gets on fire.
Yes. And of course, he doesn't have an alibi. He was just there. He was upset when
So
she refused to run away with him. And so of course, Ellie believes Eric, and is like trying to prove. So she and Deputy Michael are trying to prove that he didn't do it. And so they're investigating. And it comes out that Mr. Sheffield is up to no good. And so
it's
basically
Charles Shaughnessy, if people want to know,
Yeah.
from the nanny, Mr. Sheffield. He plays a villain in this one.
Yes. And he's actually on playing a villain now on General Hospital.
Oh, is he really? Yeah.
But he's actually pretty good he's fun as a villain. So
Mhm.
he is so basically the mayor had the plans for I guess a copy of the tentative plans for the railroads in the barn for some reason. And I guess he and his little crony staged the fire in order to kind of cover up that they were stealing the plans for the railroad. And so Ellie breaks into his office and finds these plans that should just be in the mayor's barn. And of course, he catches her at the end. So that was actually a pretty good cliffhanger.
Yeah, it was a good cliffhanger. I mean,
Mhm.
he's like, what, what are you doing? And he holds her
Yeah,
gunpoint. And
yeah,
then it's like, to be continued.
yeah. So that was fun. So I liked Natalie Hosky. It was Ellie. So it's Ellie, so her husband and her daughter were killed I guess it was some type of storm. I guess it was a tornado.
Tornado. Yeah. I mean,
And
and it doesn't look the best, but it's a TV
yeah,
budget. I was fine with it.
yeah, whatever. So and so she's kind of struggling. And it seems like she kind of has mixed feelings about being with her niece and nephew because of her own loss. But
Yeah, because she feels like she's not like the same thing's gonna happen to
yeah,
them
yeah,
she's like bad luck or something.
yeah. And also so I liked that. I liked her and her brother's relationship, and how if I think it thought it was funny how people kept talking about how excited her brother was about her coming to town, but then he tried to act all nonchalant like when they first got together. I thought that was kind of funny. It was like a little like joke.
Mm.
And I think they kind of mirrored the sibling relationship between the niece and nephew. I thought I liked
They were
her, and
cute as
yeah,
kids.
yeah, and I liked her and Dylan Bruce together, as
Yeah.
like I thought he was very charming. He has like this very like kind of mischievous look to him when in
Yeah.
a
I can
movies.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's great. It's
mhm,
hard for me to even think of a bad Hallmark movie he's done.
yeah,
Because I mean, he was so good in The Christmas Promise. I love
yeah.
that movie. And
And what's
then
the other one?
the novel one,
Yes, a novel romance, a novel
yeah, novel
romance.
romance. That's
I really
great.
like that one. I really like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And then this, and I know there's others, but yeah, he's really good. And then we have the Avery character. He's foreclosing on all these
Mhm,
houses and being really
mhm,
mean.
mhm,
And he gets this bandit guy to do his dirty work for him.
mhm,
And he's robbing people at gunpoint.
mhm.
He robs this woman of her uh, bag of gold.
Yeah,
And
it's a couple, right? That
yeah,
he was like kind of being nice to them, and they were just talking about all that they had their money in this bag or something. He's like, "Oh, I'll be taking that."
yeah. Really don't mention that around strangers, lady.
Yeah.
But yeah, then he attacks Aaron
Hmm.
and throws him down the hill,
Hmm.
and he's injured, so he can't get up. There's nobody
Yes.
down at the hill, nobody can hear
Mhm.
him, and he's stuck.
I thought it was interesting that he was like, I'm not going to hang for killing a sheriff, but you did just shoot him,
Yeah.
uh, and leave him to bleed to death, and then kick him down a hill.
Yeah.
So might as well just
Probably
kill him
not
and bury the
that
body here in the
different.
woods. You can,
I was a little surprised that they didn't make this more faith-based, because that has always been a part of the Love
mhm.
Comes Softly
I mean,
series. I mean, the
uh,
first one, especially, where he prays, uh,
mhm,
throughout all of them, they've all had elements of faith. So I was a little
mhm.
surprised that they didn't turn Aaron falling down the hill into kind of a faith-based moment where he was like
Um,
praying or something like that.
and they kind of did, like, you know, they had him like quoting scripture, and they kind of did that a little bit, but they didn't really like say that it was scripture that he was quoting, and they did
Hmm.
that a couple of times. Um, and then you do see them praying at dinner and things. It is
Yeah, I could
less.
have just seen it at the bottom of the hill, though,
Mhm,
him praying. But yeah, he's down there, and his son, it's Christopher, right?
mhm,
Christopher. Yeah, he knows there's something wrong, and so he sneaks
mhm.
out. And
Yeah,
and then uh
gets
we have
lost.
and then we get the cliffhanger with Weaver holding her up.
Mhm,
So, and then in part two,
mhm,
so yeah, the sun goes, it's dark, he's got the horse Buster,
mhm,
and he gets lost.
mhm. And so Deputy Michael comes and rescues Ellie from Mr. Sheffield, and then arrests Mr. Sheffield. Yeah, for that. They go and then they go home.
They release Eric.
Yes, and then they release Eric, and then they go back, and they find that the little boy's missing. So they go and search for him, and he is like fallen over, like very ill. Turns out that he ate poisonous berries.
Yeah.
And so she from her mother Marty learns, I forgot what it was that they got, but they got something to kind of counteract the
it was like petals.
Yes.
Kind of petals.
Yes. And so they got that for him, and and we're not sure if he's going to be okay, but then he ends up turning the corner, so he ends up being all right. And we forgot to mention, so the mayor's wife is doing the Christmas pageant.
Oh,
and,
yeah, we've got that.
And like is like frantic because one of the wise men got sick, and so the niece becomes a wise person in the play. And so there's that going on too. It's just like there was just a lot going on. So it
really was. I mean, they fill it up. They probably didn't need to make this 3 hours, but they do fill it up pretty good.
Yeah. So
and then they help him to get better, and then Aaron has a dream, and he climbs, pushes himself up the mountain.
Yes, that's when he quotes the
Good
scripture.
Scene. Yeah.
And then this old man finds him in the woods.
Ernest Borgnine named Nicholas.
Yes, and he seems interesting. Is he an angelic figure? Is he Saint Nicholas?
I think it was definitely the implication at the end, like, oh, yeah, Nicholas.
Yeah, and nobody knows where he is, and he just suddenly appeared.
Yeah.
So I like those little like winks, like maybe he's Santa Claus or something. So I like that.
And we get another, like I was saying, we get another cauterizing of a wound.
Yes. Yeah.
In this movie too. Ooh. And because he got a slug on his leg, he said.
Well, I mean,
he says he has to get the slug out of the leg.
It's probably the bullet. The bullet.
But he said slug. Is that just a name for bullet?
Like a bullet.
Okay.
They call them. And so, and of course, they don't want that to get infected. So that's why they have to cauterize the wound to like make sure it's not infected.
That was pretty intense. Yeah, and he gives him the piece of rubber to bite down on.
Yeah.
Woo. But then we also have, so Eric gathers all the town to the mayor's house to help fix the barn.
Yes.
Yeah, so he gets major brownie points with the mayor for that.
Yes. Because the little nosy person that lives in town, that's like the nosy gossip lady, is the one that kind of suggests that he be a good neighbor and everything. And
they find out that the railroad's not coming through the town, so everybody's mad at the mayor.
Yes.
And they said, we're going to cancel Christmas, we're going to cancel the pageant, and everybody's like horrified.
Because of course, like if the railroad's running through the town, then that means more people coming, more money, and things like that. And so of course, when the mayor told them that there were plans for this railroad to come to the town, everybody was excited about this prospect of what it would do for the town and their prosperity. And then when they find out that the railroad's not coming to the town, they accuse him of lying, and they're all obviously all upset because that their hopes of at least in that way of their financial prosperity dashed. And then Eric kind of defends the mayor publicly and kind of talks about how good he's been as a mayor and how much safer the town has been since he's been the mayor and all these other things, and talks about his father and everything. And he seems to kind of win over the whole town. Finally, after
he has the mayor hum and deck the halls by the end of it.
And then they have the pageant, which was cute. You had the man's wife had to like whisper lines and then to the kids and all that stuff.
The only thing is, I wonder if you would do all of this while he's still missing. Like I feel like you wouldn't have the strength to have a party and to a pageant when your brother and father is still missing.
Well, they have faith.
Yeah, that's true.
So, they have to celebrate Christmas. That's what he would want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they go ahead and do that. And
yeah.
eventually,
and then he asks Nicholas, how can I repay you? How can I ever repay you for what you've done? And he says, just remember to pay along the kindness.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we get a scene between Michael and Ellie. And she says, I never thought I would love again. And then I found you.
Yes.
It was pretty good.
I mean, it's not much time has passed, but
and Suzanne and Eric finally get the blessing from the mayor and they kiss, and then Michael and Ellie kiss, and then Nicholas brings Aaron back, and then they go to thank him, and he's gone.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the real Saint Nicholas part of it. And then they also look out and it's snowing.
Yes, and because that was another thing he said he wanted. When Nick asked him what he would like to see for Christmas, he said snow, because where he came from, it was always snow. Do we even know where they are?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Frontier America. I feel like Colorado, I want to say, but I don't know. So yeah, this is really solid. I enjoyed it. Great cast, good story. I mean, I'd give it like a 4.
Yeah, I agree. 4 for me too. I really enjoyed this one. This is a fun movie. And I agree. I wish that they would do more of these. And I liked the kind of serial nature of it, where you have kind of and little offshoots where the characters from one go to another.
Yeah, it's nice when I kept thinking that that's what they're going to do in What Calls the Heart, particularly with. I was surprised they didn't with Rosemary and Leland, because in so many of these kinds of books you have the children of the one people coming, then they'll be the leads of the next book, and then the next will be the next generation. That's what they did with Love Comes Softly. I think it's Matilda, isn't that her name? So that's the adopted daughter.
Yes, that's
and so the last 3 are about her, and I like that. I think it's fun, and you get she'll get like a letter from her mom, from Missy, or Missy would get one from Marty, or they'd come and visit, or and I don't know, that's the way that romance novels are. So it's fun when they treat these movies like that.
Yeah, I think that they should, like have a great way is like have the wrong guy like not be so bad, and so the next, and maybe he gets a sequel or something, and it's about the wrong guy finding love, or
that's fun.
or like have like the best friend be someone that sometimes in these movies, and have the best friend like get their own movie, and the original person does like a little cameo or something. Like I think that would be cool.
Yeah, and I like how the fact that all 3 of these movies were all kind of more subtly Christmas, and they all featured, maybe less so an old-fashioned Christmas, but they all tried, at least I think, to really feature the reason behind Christmas. It's not just a romantic comedy backdrop, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it is refreshing when you get to the core reason of Christmas in these movies.
Yeah, I agree. So I actually enjoyed this crop of movies, and all of them. Like, what's this movie? The last one. This is what, 2011. I want to say.
I forgot to write that down. Let's see. Yes, 2011. So 2011, 2002, and 2010.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a while since they've done. Well, I mean, except for the Christmas Spectacular, since they've done, or So I think
Yeah, I would love to see them do more like
Mhm.
this. I really
Yeah,
would.
every couple
And
of years.
especially the Westerns, because they've got the one calls the Heart set. So it's not like it would
Yeah.
be that onerous
hmm
to do.
Yes, I
Hmm.
agree.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope Hallmark, if you're listening, you know,
Yeah.
do one of these every couple of years, and
Yeah, it would be fun. It would be fun. So let us know what you think if you're listening, what you think of these three movies. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And this one is available on Up Faith and Family on
yes,
their app. So if you
mhm.
have that, that's how you watch it.
think
And
all of I think all of the Love Comes Softly series is on
I think that's
Faith and
right. Yeah.
also. Mhm.
So yeah, let us know what you think. And if you have any suggestions for 2013 or before movies that you think we should talk about, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, the Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store. Check that out. We have lots of fun with the Patreon. And
Yep,
and you can even end up on the podcast like Thaddeaus here. Patreon.
right.
Yeah, so check that out. And thanks again and Merry Christmas. Bye,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.